My family and I were the biggest skeptics, which is why what happened that day was inexplicable. I went downstairs and Alex was in the kitchen. I grabbed a water and asked him if he believed in ghosts. He shook his head, but told me a story about something that he thinks may seem paranormal. Then I looked at him and asked, "Did you ever try to scare me when I came home from school?" I planned on asking that question to follow with my story. Once he said, "Somehow that calms me down and I wasn't going to bring anything else up because I thought it was some kind of closure." Alex continued by saying, "But all I did was shoot a Nerf gun bullet at you while you were on the computer." I wish he didn't say that. That wasn't what happened to me in the 7th grade. I do remember Alex shooting a Nerf gun at me, but it felt inferior to what I was about to tell him. I continued to speak with him about the story that follows. It happens in middle school when I was in 7th grade and recently started off the new year. I came home that day and went to my bedroom where I set my bed and put in earbuds to watch YouTube videos. My mom had called me to tell me that Alex would be gone or would be leaving soon to go to a friend's house. My parents also worked late, which means I would be home alone. I was a very quiet kid when no one was around because I always had this fear that there could be someone in the house with me. If I didn't make much noise, then they couldn't find me, right? Who knew that suspicion could have possibly been true? I paused my YouTube video and headed to the bathroom. My house has a very weird layout. I'll try to explain what the important parts of the story have looked like. If you were in my bathroom facing the door, you could step out and take a left and Alex's room would be to your right at the end of the hallway, which is a short hallway. If you went right, you would reach the stairway that went down and stopped because there was a platform in the middle, and then you would walk in the same direction you came to get lower. The stairway leads to our main entrance of the house. We also have an alarm activated if any doors or windows are opened. A box will immediately say which door has been used. I was in the bathroom and right about to flush the toilet when I heard a loud thud come from Alex's room. I assumed that he must be about to leave for his friend's house, so I flushed the toilet and got up to wash my hands. There were no more noises. The house felt still, but I felt like I was being listened to. I turned off the sink and walked over to the bathroom door to lock it. Something felt wrong. My stomach started to ache from fear. I felt like I was just being paranoid. But I also couldn't shake that weird feeling in my gut, so I waited for another noise. I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't text Alex. We had a house phone in there, but it made loud noises when you dialed, so I didn't want to risk it. And then I heard talking, which was definitely coming from Alex's room. But that was not Alex talking, and it couldn't have been my dad. The muttering was deep and low. It sent shivers down my spine. I could tell it was a voice because of the distinction of an S or a T, but I couldn't understand what it was saying. Then there was a slow pounding noise that started getting closer to me. It came out of Alex's room and made its way towards the bathroom door. It stopped dead in its tracks right at the door. I threw myself away from the door near the window, hoping that if it busted in, I could get away to leave. I couldn't fight whoever it was since I was a weak 7th grader, so that was out of the question. I covered my mouth to keep from breathing loudly in case they didn't know I was in the bathroom, and they continued to walk. I could hear them making their way to the stairway, and then it stopped. And I heard a loud crashing noise from what I thought was the middle platform of the stairs, and then again at the bottom. Then the muttering stops, and the loud pounding made its way to the door. I heard the door open and close, and I heard the alarm go off for the door as well. Not sure whether to feel safe or not, I made my way to the door and rested my hand on the doorknob, still covering my mouth. To the left of me towards the ground is a laundry chute that led to our laundry room. If someone were to get from the main floor to the laundry room, it would definitely take over 30 seconds. But about 10 seconds after the door opened and closed, a vicious jabbing noise pounded at the small laundry chute door. I stood there, not sure what to do. It sounded like someone took the end of a broom and reached up there to stab at the door. I watched as the pounding of the door vibrated the small laundry chute door, hoping that it wouldn't bust open. Then it ended. I waited in the bathroom for what seemed like an eternity, and then quietly crept to my room to call my parents. No one picked up, so I waited for them to get home and held my door handle to make sure no one could get in, since I didn't have a lock on it. When my parents got home, they didn't believe me. Soon after, Alex arrived and he doubted me as well. Telling this again to Alex made his mouth drop. He continued to tell me that he used to hear things coming from the attic that used to open up in his bedroom. I will honestly never forget that day. Alex and I can't figure out who or what that was. And I try not to think too hard about it either. I still don't quite know what happens, and I may never know, but I want to. My name is Emma. I was 16 years old at the time, living with my mom in a crappy Bronx, New York apartment. Living in the Bronx was definitely an experience, not a good one. Always sketchy characters around, usually scary to walk alone at night. Small apartment, and creepy neighbors. I don't mean that as an understatement. Our apartment was the second to last one in a hall on the 7th floor. And our neighbor, the owner of the last apartment in the hall, seemed to always be sitting outside his door, sitting on the window. So he would always make a point of looking at me when I entered the apartment, even when I would be with my mom. My mom told me to stay away from that man. We never even knew his name. He was a black man in his 60s, very little hair left, but his remaining hair was gray. He always had the same emotionless expression on his face when he looked at me. And then one day it started. Every time I would see him in the hall, he would say hi to me, but he'd call me by my name to make it even creepier. I wasn't exactly sure how he got my name, but I never asked. There was one night that my mom was working the night shift, so I'd be home alone all night. I came home at like 9 p.m., and the neighbor was, as usual, sitting on that window, as if he didn't have anything going on in his life. As I unlocked the door, this time instead of saying hi to me, he asked me if my mom was working tonight. Here's where I look back and cringe because of my own stupidity, because I foolishly nodded yes. He didn't say anything after that. He just slowly nodded his head. I didn't say anything else either. I simply walked inside and shut the door. I had enough of his creepiness for one night. Basically, after getting home, I just washed up a little bit, had a snack, did laundry, and took a shower. As I was in the shower, I heard a weird rumbling noise. It was a pretty concerning noise, but I couldn't even begin to try and pin out what it could have been. I got out of the shower after hearing it because I was concerned someone might have been in the apartment. I heard a similar noise outside of the bathroom, seemed to come from my bedroom. I threw on the clothes I had in the bathroom and searched my entire room. I couldn't find a person. But while searching my room, I saw an ever so tiny hole in the wall. I got closer to feel it and look at it. Then I got down on my knees to look through it. And when I saw what was on the other side, I fell backwards because of how scared I was of what I saw. It was someone's eye. Someone was actually looking through that hole from the other side. And I realized this wall separated our apartment from the creepy neighbor's apartment. Then I had a sudden realization of what that sound I heard in the bathroom must have been. I ran back to the shower and felt all around the wall until I found another hole identical in size to the one in my room. The neighbor drilled these 2 holes, maybe even more, to spy on me. I called my mom and told her, and as I was on the phone with her, there were knocks on the apartment door. There was the neighbor, and he kept yelling, "Open the door right now, I didn't drill those holes." My mom freaked out and told me to call the cops, and she tried to get home ASAP. One good thing about the Bronx police response time is it's the best, and there were cops at my apartment door in under 5 minutes. My mom was home half an hour later. My mom pressed charges for stalking, invasion of privacy, and criminal mischief. The apartment building also evicted the man and patched up the holes at the man's expense. I'll always remember the adventure when my friend Carter and I ventured into the wilderness. Carter, a true nature aficionado and an Eagle Scout, loved diving into the great outdoors, often embarking on camping expeditions. On this particular trip, his girlfriend Zoe was with us, and I was invited at the last minute. We loaded up the car and headed out, arriving at our remote destination 3 hours later. Carter had a disdain for traditional campsites, believing they diluted the authentic camping experience with their crowds. He led us down an obscure dirt trail off a forgotten road, driving for a short distance before selecting a spot to stop. It was such an unassuming location that I hadn't realized we had reached our base. We unpacked our gear from the trunk, which included tents, sleeping bags, food, toilet paper, and first aid supplies. Aiming to keep the trip simple for my sake, Carter allocated tasks. I knew how to pitch a tent, so Carter had me set up our shelters. Zoe stayed back to help me with the tents and organize our supplies, while Carter went to gather firewood, returning now and then with arms full. As night crept in, thankfully, Carter had collected enough wood for a substantial fire, and our tents were ready. We huddled around the fire, sharing stories and enjoying drinks, reminiscing about times before Zoe's arrival. Eventually, tired of our drunken tales, Zoe retired to her tent early, leaving Carter and me to quieten down out of respect. Finishing my last drink, the alcohol's warmth spread through me, and Carter and I continued to chat until he paused and gestured for silence. From the darkness beyond our campfire's glow, footsteps rustled. Carter reassured me it was likely just a deer, but when I nervously suggested a bear, he remained silent. The footsteps circled us, growing progressively louder, and were soon accompanied by a strange, indescribable clicking growl. Carter signaled frantically for me to get into my tent, which I did immediately, assuming he and Zoe did the same. The fire outside cast ominous shadows on the tent walls, including the silhouette of some monstrous, two-legged creature. The heavy, slow footsteps moved from my tent toward where Carter and Zoe were. Suddenly, Zoe's scream pierced the night, followed by Carter shouting for us to run. Without a second thought, I dashed from my tent, following their panicked escape into the pitch-black forest. We could hear something chasing us, its footsteps mirroring ours. Somehow Carter found the car in the chaos. We scrambled inside, not daring to glance back, and Carter hit the gas. But soon, we reached a dead end. Carter had to navigate the truck in the darkness, alarmingly close to whatever had been pursuing us. I suggested turning off the lights to hide, but Carter needed them to avoid crashing into the trees. After a harrowing few moments, we were turned around and speeding away from our terror. We left behind all our camping gear, easily worth over $100. The cause of Zoe's scream was a chilling breath and a force pushing against their tent, attempting to tear it open. Carter remains puzzled by the incident, unable to identify what stalked us, but convinced it was no human, given its immense size and bizarre noises. That night stands as our most horrifying and unexplainable experience, a vivid reminder of the unknown that dwells in the depths of the wilderness. When my cousin Lucas and I were in our early 20s, we embarked on several camping adventures across Colorado. This particular story unfolded when I was 22, and Lucas was 23, deep within the Arapaho National Forest. It was my first time venturing into this part of the forest, although Lucas, an experienced camper, had been there before. We chose a weekday for our expedition, leveraging the flexibility of our jobs to enjoy the tranquility away from the usual weekend rush. Our journey began at a secluded picnic area, marking the entry point into the dense woods. After a brisk 15-minute hike, Lucas found us an ideal camping spot, a clearing spacious enough for our tents, portable stove, and a campfire. Setting up camp was always quicker for Lucas. His Eagle Scout skills shone through as he pitched his tent in minutes, a task that typically took me over 20 minutes to accomplish. Once our base was established, we gathered stones to form a fire ring, igniting a welcoming blaze with some starter and a lighter. As the evening sky dimmed, Lucas took charge of the grill, cooking up a feast of steak and burgers. His culinary prowess was unmatched, ensuring we were well fed. We were mindful of wildlife, keeping bear spray at hand. Though Lucas reassured me that bears were the least of our worries, it was other people that posed the real threat. Dinner was followed by beers and a backdrop of classic rock from our portable speaker, a quintessential camping vibe that's hard to beat. Engrossed in card games and Uno, our peaceful evening took a startling turn when we heard the unnerving sound of someone humming and footsteps approaching from the darkness beyond our campsite. The sudden silence, as I paused the music, heightened our senses to the eerie presence. Despite Lucas's attempt to dismiss it, the unnerving interruption of a stick thrown into our clearing confirmed our fears. Someone, or something, was out there. Lucas's shouted warnings seemed to deter the intruder, but the persistent cracking of branches in the distance kept us on edge. The decision to stay put, despite my initial urge to flee, was a testament to Lucas's logic. Navigating the forest in darkness was a risk too great. We resolved to take turns keeping watch, a necessary precaution against the unknown threats lurking beyond our firelight. The night's rest was anything but peaceful. Awoken by an indistinct noise, I found myself face to face with what appeared to be Lucas, peering into my tent. Yet, something felt amiss. The realization that it wasn't Lucas watching over me, but rather a stranger, sent shivers down my spine. My rush to alert Lucas, finding him asleep in his tent, underscored the gravity of our situation. The uninvited guest's presence, now an undeniable threat, forced us into a single tent, clinging to our bear spray with a newfound sense of vulnerability. The night dragged on, filled with anxious anticipation and the haunting melody of the intruder's humming. Dawn's light offered a semblance of safety, prompting us to hastily pack and retreat to the familiarity of our car. The unnerving experience not only cut our trip short, but left a lasting impact on my willingness to venture into the wilderness again. Reflecting on the incident 6 years later, Lucas's occasional invitations to camp are met with a hesitance I can't shake off. The memory of that night, especially the sight of a stranger's silhouette against the tent fabric, remains vivid, a nightmare turned reality. The wilderness, once a refuge, now harbors a sense of fear, a reminder of the unpredictability and potential dangers posed by others. It's a stark contrast to the serene escapades we once enjoyed, untouched by the shadows that now loom over my desire to camp. The haunting question of who was out there and why they chose to stalk our campsite lingers unanswered, a chilling mystery that may forever deter me from returning to the solitude of nature's embrace. So, Derek and his crew decided to book a coastal retreat in Florida, an adventure that unfolded in ways none of them could have foreseen. Squeezed into Derek's sedan, they journeyed down, anticipation high for their beachfront getaway. The rental was a modest abode nestled directly on the shore, a quaint contrast to its mix of opulent and understated neighbors. With 4 bedrooms, the house offered each friend their private sanctuary. Its location on a quiet road, with the bay out front and the beach as its backyard, promised a secluded escape. Interestingly, throughout their arrival and unpacking, the street remained eerily deserted. The home's interior was simple and clean, adorned with seaside motifs that echoed its surroundings, including a surfboard decoratively placed behind the living room's television. The living room offered panoramic views of the beach, accessible via a short descent from the back deck. Derek lucked out with a room that boasted ocean views. Their first order of business was to immerse themselves in the beach lifestyle, soaking in the sun and enjoying the waves and a game of football. It felt as though they had the beach to themselves, save for an elderly couple in the distance. The evening led them to explore local eateries and partake in the town's nightlife. Returning under the cloak of night, they engaged in a spirited, albeit tipsy, game of beach football. During the game, Derek spotted a figure standing waist deep in the ocean, illuminated only by the moon's glow. This sight was unsettling, given the hour, but they shrugged it off, attributing it to a nocturnal swimmer's whim. However, the night took a turn for the eerie as Derek and his friend Matt noticed someone standing on the beach, this time clearly observing them from the shore. Despite their discomfort, they tried to dismiss it, but the figure's persistent gaze compelled them to retreat indoors. Back inside, their friends, Ethan and Lucas, had already succumbed to sleep. After the beachfront encounter, Derek and Matt opted to end their night as well, hoping the next day would erase the night's unease. Yet, just before bed, Derek noticed the figure again, now ominously stationed on the deck. This sight sent him rushing to Matt, but when they looked again, the figure had vanished. Despite the absence of the mysterious visitor, a chilling knock on Derek's window later that night paralyzed him with fear, a moment of terror that prompted him to rouse everyone. A collective search yielded no signs of the intruder. The next day, inquiries with neighbors unveiled similar eerie experiences, adding a layer of intrigue and apprehension to their stay. Though the rest of their vacation passed without incident, the encounter left Derek and his friends with lingering questions and a haunting memory of their Florida beach house experience, especially what might have been revealed had Derek dared to confront the nighttime visitor. At the tender age of 9, I found myself alone for the evening, engrossed in a gaming session of Metroid Prime on my beloved GameCube, a staple of my childhood pastimes. My mother, who would occasionally leave me by myself for brief periods, perhaps to run errands or grab groceries, always had a rule I was not to open the door for anyone. That night, as I navigated through alien landscapes, the shrill ring of the house phone pierced the air, compelling me to pause my game and dash downstairs. By the fourth ring, I had the receiver in hand, and the caller ID flashed my mother's cell number. Her voice came through, asking me to help her with the groceries outside. Yet, something was amiss. The voice, though it tried to mimic my mother's, had an unfamiliar tone, a detail that didn't escape even my young ears. Questioning the odd sound of her voice only led to more suspicion, especially when she uncharacteristically used the term sweetie twice in a brief conversation, a term she seldom used with such frequency. I decided to hang up, troubled by the exchange. When the phone rang again, displaying my mother's number once more, I let it go unanswered, a decision driven by a racing heart and a sense of foreboding. The third call, however, came from an unknown number. This time, a man claimed to be my father, insisting he was outside with a lot to explain. The impossibility of this claim my father had passed when I was 3 sent chills down my spine, and I hung up immediately. The subsequent knocks and the man's voice claiming to be my dad from the other side of the door escalated my fear. It was a drastic leap from worrying over a possibly stolen phone to fearing for my safety from the presence outside. My mother, after all, would have used her key, not knocked. Peering around the kitchen corner, I could hear him tampering with the door, trying to gain entry. In a moment of sheer terror, I dialed 911, a move no child should ever have to make. Following the operator's instructions, I barricaded myself in the downstairs bathroom, the tension mounting as I heard the intruder attempting to force open windows. The thought that any unsecured entry point could lead to a tragic turn haunted me until the police arrived, heralding a brief respite from the night's terrors. The ordeal revealed a sinister plot likely concocted by a couple who had somehow acquired my mother's phone and personal information, possibly aiming to exploit the situation of a single mother with children. The stolen phone, an old Nokia flip model, must have contained enough details to embolden them to attempt such a heinous act. The aftermath of this event changed our family routine significantly. My mother, understandably shaken, refrained from leaving me alone at night for years to come. The incident, a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities that come with personal information falling into the wrong hands, left a lasting imprint on our lives, shaping our caution and awareness in the digital age.